Hey there, fellow classic comic collectors. As always, I'm Scott Harris King, and today I'm bringing you part one of the complete Spire Comics. One thing I should mention up front is I don't have a complete set of Spire Comics. So why am I doing this video? Well, I'm working on a complete set of Spire Comics, and as far as I can tell, I now have more than half of them. And there's so many of them that I probably would want to split into two videos even if I had the full run. So what I decided to do is I'm going to show you the half that I have now, and then somewhere down the road, once I get the rest of them, I'll show you the second half. But that might take a while. I didn't want to wait another 2 years or something to finish the set. So I'm going to show you the Spire Comics I have now. Couple things I want to mention up front. It's really difficult to actually find a lot of good information about Spire Comics. If you go to the Wikipedia page, which frankly so far seems to be the best source I've been able to find, it lists 55 different Spire Comics titles. Now, let's take a step back. What is Spire Comics? In case you're not familiar with Spire Comics was a line of Christian comic books that came out in the 1970s and into the 1980s. They were done by Archie Comics and artist Al Hartley, who before working at Archie worked at Atlas and Marvel for a long time on their teen humor books and the romance titles. In the early 70s, he started working for Archie on their mainstream books at a time where Archie was super popular, so they were expanding more and more titles. And he started he would become a born-again Christian just before this time, I think in the late 60s, something like that. And so he started putting in a lot of like religious messaging. And the story that I heard, I don't know if this is true or not, but my understanding is that the people at Archie were kind of like, well, maybe we don't want that in the main Archie titles. And so what ended up happening one way or another is that Al Hartley left Archie and he created this Christian comic publishing company called Spire Comics. And one of the big draws with Spire Comics is, in fact, the Archie stuff, because they basically allowed him to keep doing his religious Archie stories, but rather than coming out under the Archie Comics banner, these were like officially, I don't know if licensed is the right word, but they were officially sanctioned Archie comics that were coming out from Spire, from Al Hartley. So there's 55 different Spire comics. They're not all Archies, although that's the biggest category. Again, if you look at the Wikipedia, they have it broken down into some subcategories that I think are useful. It's basically, you got your Archie comics. Then there's another line of kids comics called Barney Bear. And then broadly speaking, the other ones fall into category of biographical comics about famous figures or less famous figures that have some kind of Christian element to their story. Adaptations of books, Christian books, etc. And there's a little bit of overlap between those two categories. And then stories from the Bible. So those are basically the main categories. Now there's 19 Spire comics that feature Archie. That was where I sort of started getting into these originally. It was mostly through the Archie stuff because I collect Archie. I have 14 of them so far. So I'm going to show you the 14 that I have, show you the other ones that I have as well. I've mentioned this before, but I was raised sort of in a religious household. I say sort of. My family itself wasn't like super religious, but we were religious enough that we went to church every week, and my parents sent me to a private church school. It's a Seventh-day Adventist, have a very large and developed educational system. And so from kindergarten through the end of college, it was all church school. And so I have a particular interest in Christian comics because of that background. So I find these fascinating on different levels, and they're very different from other Christian comics. These are much more sort of, they're Archie stuff, right? It's Archie style. They're preaching, but they're sort of like goody two-shoes preaching, right? As opposed to, for instance, the Jack Chick Crusader series, which I've talked a little bit about recently, which is just the absolutely nut job, hardline, super conservative conspiracy theory sort of, wackadoodle Christian comics. So those are that stuff over there. That's like that's like the crack cocaine. This stuff over here is like getting like slightly buzzed off of a light beer in comparison. So let's take a look at these. We're going to start off with these again. There's supposed to be about 55 of them. It's actually really hard to tell how many there are because first of all, there's a lot of different versions of the comics. You can see here that we'll start with the Archie's Family Album, and you can see that this has a price of 39 cents. Now, they had a few that had a 35-cent price point, but 39 is generally their earlier price point. So this is from like early mid-70s. But a lot of these were reprinted several times, and so you'll get a situation where you have other price points. For instance, here's Archie's Love Scene, which has a 49-cent price point. And where it gets really confusing is that there are some issues from Spire where it's not just the price that's different. They actually have a different title. So it'll be the same interior, different title, different logo, different cover, but the same comic. And so that's where I'm not really sure how many there really are out there. 55 is quite right. I'll show you one later on where I've seen another version of it that's not even listed on Wikipedia, and I haven't been able to find any information about it. We'll get to that one later. But anyway, here's Archie's Love Scene, and again, it looks just like an Archie comic because it's from an actual Archie artist, and it is sanctioned by Archie. And it says, look how happy they seem. They do their homework every day. They're never late to class. The complaint box is empty. They're up to something. So the teachers are like, why is everyone so happy and nice? I'll give you a reason why. Jesus, that's why. Spoiler alert, that's why. Archie gets a job. Now, none of these so far look particularly Christian. They don't look particularly like they're preaching to you or witnessing to you or telling you, any kind of thing like that. They pretty much just look like regular Archie comics, except they have this logo that says Spire Christian Comics. So here's Archie Gets a Job. Here's Archie's Roller Coaster, and in this one you'll see has a 69-cent price point. So it's late. It's not the latest printing, but it's a late printing. Archie and Mr. Weatherby, which is kind of an interesting title just as a nerd. Archie and Mr. Weatherby, there was a whole series that lasted for like 20 years that was all about Archie's relationship with Mr. Weatherby, but it was actually called Archie and Me. So Mr. Weatherby didn't get his name in the comic, even though he co-starred in it. It was Archie and Me, and the Me is apparently Principal Weatherby is like announcing to everyone. He's like the narrator. I don't know. It's weird. So it's cool that he actually gets his own logo finally here. It also appears as though Archie is letting him fall to his death, but it's a Christian comic, so I'm sure he'll be saved. Archie's Festival, in which for some reason Archie is wearing a chicken costume. It's, what? Okay. It looks like a chicken costume, but actually, if you look at the bunting down here, I think that's supposed to actually be a bald eagle costume he's getting in for the bicentennial. Now, I don't think this came out around the bicentennial, this version, because here's a 59-cent version. So far we've seen 39, 49, 59, and 69-cent variants, but there's still a couple other price points we haven't hit yet. Jughead's Soul Food. Got a double meaning there. Again, most of these don't seem particularly preachy. You know, you wouldn't necessarily know what you're getting. Here's Archie's date book. Now, this is an interesting one. It's also one of the ones I have that's in the nicest shape of these, because a lot of these are pretty beat up. But this is a nice yellow cover. Some roller skating, big in the early 80s. Couple things though to note. First of all, 79-cent price point, but also look at the logo. Doesn't say Spire anymore. It says New Barber Christian Comics. So in the 80s, New Barber took over, or I don't know if it was just called Barber Christian Comics and the new was to let you know that it was a new printing. I don't know. But the New Barber Christian Comics took over in the mid 80s, and they basically did one or two print runs. I say one or two. It's a little hard to say because if you look at this one, this is one of the rare Archie Spire comics that is overtly preaching. It's called Archie's Parables. This is a New Barber, but it's a 59-cent price point. So a little hard to parse exactly what's going on here. Has the same back cover as this one, as the other one. So they have the same back cover. Seems like they were printed at the same time, but one of them was 79 cents and the other was 59 cents. So I don't really know what's going on there. I tend to favor the Barber ones because they're harder to find because they were the last print runs. But when you do find them, they're often in nicer shape because they were newer. So here's Archie's car. Here's a new Barber Christian version of Archie's car. And I do have multiple versions of some of these. Like I have another copy of Archie's car that's an earlier print run from Spire. But again, I'm not really collecting all those different price variants. I just tend to pick the ones that are in the nicer shape, or if there is a Barber, I'll choose that one over the Spire usually. Archie's Clean Slate. I mean, in my experience, like Archie's Clean Slate is one of the ones I see the most. I also see a lot of Archie's One Way. Now, I mentioned this earlier. This is one of the few that I have, maybe the only one I have, that has the 35-cent price point. So now we've seen a lot of different price points. 35, 39, 49, 59, 69, and 79-cent price points on these. But this has an overtly Christian cover. Now, this is one of the earliest ones. And again, it's one of the ones I see the most. But I wonder if they sort of learned their lesson a little and made some of the covers a little less obvious. Because this one says, the cop is saying, "Do you know this is one way?" And Betty says, "This is cool. The officer is witnessing to Archie." Now, in these comics, Betty is frequently the one who, she's the nice girl next door, and she's all about the Bible. She's all about witnessing to people and preaching to people and giving people the good word. So a lot of times Betty is the one who's sort of like teaching everyone else in the comic about the good message that we're supposed to be getting, right? It's an interesting inversion of the character because Betty in the 40s and early 50s was like super horny. That was her whole thing, is she was really obsessed with Archie, who is not into her at all because he's into Veronica at the time. And so Betty's constantly scheming and chasing him and trying to get him. And like she is a horn dog, and she will, like, a lot of schemes and plots, teaming up with Reggie to come up with plots so that Reggie can go out Veronica and she can get Archie. And so to have her, 25 years later, she's like the super nice, the good girl who's the preaching to everybody. I don't know. It's interesting as a longtime Archie fan. So still have a couple more Archies here. There's Archie's World. which is just Archie wearing a bunch of different ethnic hats. And this is what I mean about a lot of these not really, they don't really give the hint up front. You don't know that you're going to get a message out of this comic. You might, as if you're a kid, you might just think, oh, it's an Archie comic. If you're a parent, you might think, oh, that has a Christian comics thing up here, but the kid won't notice. And then this is the last of the ones that I have. Again, I have 14 of the 19 Archie ones. This is Archie's Something Else, where there's a big riot or something happening at school, I guess. There's no background. So this is like, it's right out of the mid-70s DC book of not having any backgrounds. But everyone's running around and whatever, and there's a bunch of stuff going on here. There's someone filming everything for TV, and then there's the Hells Angels are driving through for some reason, and there's a hippie who's boycotting everything, including turnips. So Al Hartley has a lot to say about how bad modern culture is. So those are the 14 Archies that I have. Now, there's also 8 different issues of a series called Barney Bear. I've only got 2 of them. So here's Barney Bear Family Tree, which shows a bunch of the different bears. Now, I don't know what the inspiration for this is. I don't know if it's the Bernstein Bears. I don't know if this is based on an actual... Like, maybe they're like Archie, they licensed Barney Bear from someone. I don't know. I've never heard of Barney Bear other than this. Maybe, you know, they were really into the Country Bear Jamboree, because that's what this actually reminds me of. But these actually say on the front in big letters, Kitty's Christian Comics. So the Spire logo up here, instead of saying Spire Christian Comics, just says Spire. But there's a big thing that says Kitty's Christian Comics. This one here, you'll notice it has a price on it of $6. I think I must have been like out of my gourd to pay $6 for this, other than the fact that I've never seen it before. So, you know, I do try, when I go to the comic stores, I can see this is from Outer Limits in Waltham. When I go to stores, I do try and find things to buy so I can support the comic shops. So maybe that was into it, but normally I would not pay that kind of money for one of these. Although I have one later, I'll show you that I paid $10 for it. So now we're going to get into some of the ones that are biographical. And some of these are it's hard to parse out the ones that are biographical from the ones that are like adapting books. So these may sort of mix together. But we're going to start off with a biography of everyone's favorite Watergate criminal. It's Chuck Colson. Yes, and it says here, now a major motion picture. It's about how Chuck Colson, after being having his reputation destroyed because of his involvement in Watergate, apparently becomes a born-again Christian while he's in prison or something. And kids love it. Kids love this sort of thing, so you can understand why they would make this. Fascinating comic on several levels. I'm a historian, like an amateur historian. You know, I was born in 1973, so Watergate was taking place right when I was born. So it's a period I've read quite a bit about, but I didn't live through. This is just one of the strangest artifacts from the period, I have to say. Some of these stories and like celebrities, I don't actually necessarily know much about them. For instance, here's On the Road with Andre Crouch. Now, I've been told that this is one of the harder ones to find from Spire. It's certainly one of the ones I have that's in the lower grade. It has a 39-cent price point on it, but it also has a price tag on it that says 39 cents, or 45 cents in Canada. And obviously I can tell from the cover that he's a singer. We've got Attack, which is something about World War II, but from the perspective of a Japanese pilot who I'm assuming became a Christian at some point, because it's Attack by Mitsuo Fuchida, as told to Elizabeth Sherrill and Al Hartley. So I suspect this might be an adaptation of a book. Here's one that's about Vietnam. I haven't read this one yet. It's another 35 center, so it's an early one. It's called In the Presence of Mine Enemies, and then it has blurbs that say 7 years a POW in Hanoi, the true story of a U.S. pilot and his wife, and all these Viet Cong are gathered around this prisoner of war, and it says, you will write, and what I'm saying, you will write a confession or you will die. What is your choice? And he says, here it is. And he's written death. I love the yellow covers. So, you know, and you also know that I have a particular interest in comics about Vietnam. So this is one I haven't read all of these, obviously. You could probably tell that. I've read some of them. This is one I'm definitely going to read. Next one is Water Damaged. It's got some bad staining, and it's a book that I normally wouldn't buy something in this condition, but I've never seen this one before. So this is kind of a placeholder for me. I just got this recently. It's Tom Skinner, Up from Harlem. Another great yellow cover. It's got this cool like ladder thing over here that looks just like it's from Donkey Kong, but I'm pretty confident that this is well before that. So that's cool. And then here we have some that I'm pretty sure are books. In His Steps. It's about a guy with a giant neck beard just running into people, I guess. Haven't read this one, obviously. But I get the sense that it's, you know, whoever this hitchhiking hippie is, this backpacker, he's going to be teaching people about Jesus. And I'm guessing he wrote a book about it. At some point I'll read all of these, but... Oh, here's another biographical one. This is the one I paid $10 for. It's Tom Landry and the Dallas Cowboys. You know, living up here in New England, I've never seen this before in person. So it was one, I was happy to pay $10 for it. I'm sure it's easier to find if you're in Texas, for instance, or anywhere in the Bible Belt. Down south, it's probably much easier to find all of these, but specifically, you know, the Dallas Cowboys, Tom Landry. So, you know, I was fine with paying $10 for that. Again, here's some more that I think are adapted from books. This is one I just got recently. I think I showed this in a recent haul video. It's called Through Gates of Splendor. I actually found this right here in town while I was out Christmas shopping, and I've never seen it before. So I was happy to get this, and it's got a pretty well done cover from Al Hartley here, with some missionaries, guessing on the Amazon, being attacked by natives. So, as I said in my other video, I'm sure there's nothing out of date about this one. Here's God's Smuggler. Guys are about to go through a Soviet checkpoint. And he's got a stack of Bibles, which is no good because they're godless communists. And so he's saying out loud, he should probably be thinking this so they don't hear him, but he says it out loud, Lord, I have Bibles for your children across the border. You have made blind eyes see. Please make seeing eyes blind. One of my favorite bands, Seeing Eyes Blind. Here it is. It's God's Smuggler. I actually see this one quite a lot. This is one of the ones that I've had multiple copies of it, and I seem to see this one like more often than a lot of the other ones, for whatever reason. Similarly, I have multiple copies. I've had multiple copies of The Hiding Place, an adaptation of Corey Ten Boom's The Hiding Place. Now, I'll talk a little bit about at the end about some of the ones I don't have. The most famous Spire comic is the one that's called Hansi, the Girls that Love the Swastika, because it has this really jarring cover. Is basically why it's worth money. This one also kind of jarring because it does have a concentration camp cover, and the women are digging, they're just digging inside a concentration camp, and one of them says, "Betsy, how can we go on turning the other cheek?" And the other woman says, "We must, Corey, we must show them love is stronger than hate." No giant Nazi flag, so I guess it's not as interesting to collectors, but I've had multiple copies of this as well, and I seem to see this one quite a lot. This is a book that I never read, but it was one of those ones that going to a Christian school, we all knew about that book. Here's one. This I'm pretty sure was made into a movie that I think we saw at school. I'm not sure. I don't remember the details, but I'm pretty sure there's a movie about this. It's The Cross and the Switchblade. This is another 35-cent cover that I have here. And this is about a preacher who goes into the inner city and saves the souls of a bunch of gang members. So I'm pretty sure there was a well-known movie in the 70s that was based on the book, and that we saw again when I was in school. And I see this one around quite a bit. Here's another one that I don't see very much. I haven't really read it yet. It's Crossfire. I don't know what this is. I'm assuming it's based on a book or something. I've looked through the first few pages, and there's a bunch of like cops and drug smuggling and stuff. So I don't know what the point of it is. And then finally, I've got just a couple that are clearly based on the Bible. Some of the really obvious ones I don't have. I don't have Adam and Eve is one of the Spires that I don't have. I don't have the one called Jesus. So there's a few that I'm missing here, but I do have Alpha and Omega, which I've read, and I remember it being very strange. It almost felt like what if Jack Kirby were doing Spire Comics, had that sort of New Gods sort of feel to it. Very cosmic. Al Hartley goes cosmic in Alpha and Omega. And finally, here's Paul. The best thing about this is the huge logo. I love the giant Paul logo. That's a proper comics right there. Proper comics. There's a bunch of things going on here. I think this is one of the ones where it's adapted from the Bible, but the story doesn't take place 2,000 years ago. It's like a parable about where he takes the life of a biblical character and it sets it in the modern day. I think there's a few of those. I'm pretty sure Adam and Eve is like that. But just from looking at this, it appears that that's the case here as well. So it's all stuff with Paul in the modern day as opposed to the past. Now, I mentioned that there's some other versions of these that have different titles, different logos, and it can be really hard to even tell what exists. This is one where I think I've seen a different version of this. Not in person, but I was looking at some stuff online trying to find some information about Spire Comics. And someone was showing a lot of Spire Comics that they had, and in them were a bunch from the end of the run from the New Barber Christian Comics era. And there was one in there that I've never seen before, and I couldn't find any information about it, but it was called Saul of Tarsus. Had a different logo and a different cover, but it was called Saul of Tarsus. And of course, biblically, Paul is Saul of Tarsus. Saul was someone who was persecuting the Christians, and then he converted, and when he converted, he changed his name from Saul to Paul. So I think that Saul of Tarsus is this comic, but with a different name. But I don't know, because it's not listed on the Wikipedia. Couldn't find any information about it anywhere else online. So if you know anything about those, let me know. So right now, as far as I'm aware, there's 55 different comics. I've got 30 of them. So I'm still missing 25 of them, but I'm more than halfway. That doesn't count certain things like Saul of Tarsus, and there's a couple others where they have multiple titles. So I kind of want to get the multiple titles. I don't care about the price variance. But there's a number of ones you can see on these big ads in the back cover that I don't have yet. Here's Hansi, the one I mentioned, the girl that loves the swastika. But just looking at the back, I don't think I have Live It Up, unless that was one that was done under a different title. I don't have Time to Run. There's one here called There's a New World Coming. I don't have that one. I've never seen any of these, or else I'd have them. Adam and Eve, yeah. There's one that's called, I think it's called God is Love, but you can just see this part right here, right? And then the big one that I'm missing is right here, is Hello, I'm Johnny Cash. I'm a huge Johnny Cash fan, so I've been looking for that for a while. And sad story, I had a convention last year, you may remember this, where I was tabling at a convention, and I wanted to walk around and look at the other tables, and I got super dizzy, and I had to go to the ER, and I missed the rest of the show. Well, when that dizzy spell struck me, I was looking at a table. I was walking by a table, and I looked over, and they had Hello, I'm Johnny Cash for $20 on their rack of wall books, and I was going to walk over and buy it, and that's when I got dizzy. And so I was like, well, I'll get it when I come back. But I didn't get back. We didn't get out of the ER until the show was closed, so I still don't have it. So that's the only time I've seen one in person. You can get them online, but often they're $30, $40. So I was really bummed that I didn't get that one for $20, but I'll get it at some point. The Hansi is the one that's most expensive. I think prices vary pretty wildly on that book, but I think I'd be doing well to get it for under $50. So I'm still hoping to find that at like an antique store or a used bookstore. That's the only kind of place you'd be likely to get one for cheap, but I think there's probably quite a few still out there. So that's almost it for this time, but I got one or two more things actually to show you here, because there's a couple books that are not Spire Comics, but are frequently listed as being Spire Comics. If you see listings on eBay, for instance, a lot of times they'll lump these in. They're not from Spire. They're not from Al Hurley. They're not from Jack Chick either. They're actually from Tony Tallarico. Longtime Charlton Comics artist Tony Tallarico did 2 Christian comics in the 70s for a company called Logos. And here they are. They're both adapted from books. I'm pretty sure it's Prison to Praise. And the guy's saying, this is the FBI. You're under arrest. And they're arresting some guys. I don't know what's happening there. And then here's a gang war happening. I'm Nicky Cruz, leader of the Mau Maus. We're going to kill you and your gang. It's Run Baby Run. So these are, again, they're from Logos. I did a little bit of research. These seem to be the only 2 issues from the 70s. It looks like they put out another comic book like 25 years later in the late 90s that I've never seen. But in terms of the 70s books, Run Baby Run, Prison to Praise, I see these quite a bit. When the Spire stuff comes up, these regularly come up as well, but they're not actually from Spire. They're very similar to Spire. And again, they have different price. One's 35 cents and the other is 39 cents. So same time period, same idea, just different publisher, different artist. So that's it for this time. Well, actually, you can see on this here, there's another one I don't have, the Noah's Ark. I don't have that one. But that's it for this time. I'm going to keep looking for these. Again, I'm missing 25. That's 4 Archies, 6 Barney Bears, Hansi, Johnny Cash, and then a bunch of random stuff. But let me know what you think down below. I also wanted to mention that I have been, now I've gotten a few of the Jack Chick Crusaders comics. They're really wild and wildly offensive. And a lot of them are very offensive, and they're crazy. They're legitimately nuts. And so I actually recorded a whole video where I went through one of the issues because it was so crazy, but I decided not to publish it because it was just getting, the comic gets into some weird stuff that I'm not necessarily sure I want popping up, like people are searching for things, or the algorithms, or the AI on YouTube comes across certain code words that I have to say when I'm describing the comic. I don't know, but I want to throw it out there. Would you guys want to see Crusaders again? It's like super crazy, like right wing conservative, super Christian, stuff, like anti-Catholic stuff about the Illuminati and all sorts of absolute nonsense, combined with some crazy plots, like some truly crazy plots. So let me know if you want me to get into that. And if enough of you want it, maybe I'll put one out for you guys. But I don't know, I'm a little hesitant. But let me know what you think. Let me know what you think of the Spires. And again, they're really hard to get information on. So I know some of you who are hardcore collectors like me, you may know more about the Spires than I do. So drop some knowledge for everybody in the comments and tell us what you know about Spire. And I'll see you next time.